Hi, dearest overthinker. Welcome to episode 8 of the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about our most controversial topic yet. And I need you to walk with me on this one because today we're going to discuss how beauty, and rather the beauty standard, is used as a political and economical tool that supersedes any biological or evolutionary need to keep women meek and distracted and socially compliant. So, to begin today's episode, I think it would be really interesting to discuss where this potential concept of the beauty standard and beauty has come from. Because attractiveness has existed since the dawn of time, when humans were hunters and gatherers. And the beauty standard, rather, is a metric, a ruler, to deem some human beings more attractive than the other. And since attractiveness has always existed, one can argue that it's biological when it actually isn't. We know that back in the day, certain biological cues were used to deem some human beings more attractive than the other, just as a as a part of natural selection, because it symbolized that some women were more fertile than the other or had better genetics. But in the modern day and age, the way in which we're being fed media, you would think that we're in a population deficit. And number two, research has shown that these metrics, like certain waist to hip ratios, are what's deemed biologically more fertile or whatnot, is not applicable throughout different demographics. To add on this, a cross-cultural study was done, which included Uganda, Greece, UK, and New Zealand. And the study basically concluded that the most preferable ideal body type was one with a waist to hip ratio of 0.7. But then they compared this cross-cultural study to one that was conducted across Malaysia, Thailand, Ecuador, Peru, and they found that over there they preferred a ideal waist to hip ratio of 0.5. Now I want you to understand, if there was a biological ideal wherein which one was scientifically more fertile than the other, and it was just some innate animalistic need which would allow you to say, yes, this body type is more attractive because it is what is more evolutionarily preferable, I would understand. But then you would expect the standard to be universal, which it isn't. So what deems this beauty standard as the final measurement of people's beauty? What allows them to deem certain people more attractive than other? And that's what we're going to discuss today. So where did this wonderful concept of the beauty standard come from? Now, we know the beauty standard is something that differs from demographic to demographic, and it is determined by culture, by your status quo, by where you're living, and so many other things. But it is also, in the same vein, a goalpost. It's a goalpost that you can never reach, right? It wants you to, the advertisement and media wants you to think that you're almost there. You're one purchase away from it. You're 10 kilos away from it, or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, to bridge that almost there and being there is impossible, quite literally. And also, the beauty standard is the norm. It's what's obvious. Like, obviously that will seem more attractive, but I just want to remind you, like, that's just what we are being enforced into thinking, because these things were also considered the beauty standard over normal. And I'm going to read from my notes over here. Foot binding in China, where girls' feet were tightly bound from childhood to create tiny lotus feet as a symbol of beauty, wealth, and femininity. Neck rings for people from Myanmar, the Kayan people. Women wear stacked brass rings from a young age to create the appearance of an elongated neck, considered beautiful and elegant. Lip plates, Mercy people, Ethiopia. Large clay lip plates are worn by some women as a sign of beauty, adulthood, and cultural identity. And one of the most well-known examples, Victorian England. Women used lead-based makeup and even arsenic products to achieve extremely pale skin despite the severe health risks. And you're gonna tell me now, oh, what sort of examples do you have? Like, in the modern day and age, we're too intelligent to fall for these things. Really? Really? What about all the surgeries, all of the invasive surgeries that are being performed? Fillers, Botox, all of these different things that, probably if you were to show it to those people back in the day, they would think that you're absolutely crazy for doing it. But it's the norm. Every second person is getting a nose job, every other person is doing Botox as well. So it's normal. The beauty standard being enforced is considered the norm, even though it isn't. But that's the point of today's episode, because I've seen so many young girls come across my feed, and all of them just talking about how they're gonna, like, how to glow up, or how to be the most beautiful girl at school, or whatever it might be, like becoming more and more compliant to this beauty standard, as we all were. I'm not trying to shame anyone. I was that way as well. And I think that's what the beauty standard does. It slides its like dirty little fingers through the crevices of your brain and makes you feel not worth it, and it makes you feel as though you're not worth anyone's time unless you are beautiful, as though your beauty is something you must owe to the world, when that's not the case. I think it's a universal experience to have looked at yourself in the mirror and been discontent with how you look. At least that's been the case with me as well, where I've looked at myself in the mirror and thought, oops, I could be a little skinnier, or my eyebrows are too bushy, or my lips are too thin. And I think it's a bit heartwarming and saddening at the same time that everyone's had that experience. But it's important to realize, firstly, that it's normal. The need you feel to look more beautiful is not something you should be ashamed of. Yes, everyone feels that way, but at the same time, it's like a wake up call to say, whoa, you actually don't have to. You don't have to perform. You don't owe beauty to anyone. You don't have to be beautiful, right? And you don't have to keep policing yourself and keep thinking about, oh, like, do I look skinny enough? And I'm saying this more to myself than I'm saying it to you as well, because I think that way still. Even though I'm making this podcast episode, I think that way, like, oh, like, is my hair looking nice, or like, is my makeup looking too much, or whatever it might be. But at the same time, I'm asking you to resist. And it's hard, I know, because it's an oppressive structure. It holds you in a double bind. One, because, like, I understand the argument of why wouldn't I use, you're saying all this about beauty being currency and whatnot that determines your worth. So why wouldn't I use it as a tool? Why wouldn't I leverage that? And I understand that take. I completely understand that. Why wouldn't you utilize being beautiful to your advantage? And I'm not saying you must completely eradicate that either, but at the same time, if you start to equate how much you're worth to how beautiful you are, it's so detrimental, because firstly, drawing that line is so difficult, and number two, if you comply to those standards, you will start to believe it, and then we're going against what women for generations fought against, and that is not to be seen as objects for the male gaze, something used to please the male gaze, and that's what becomes the problem. And I'm not saying entirely reject the beauty standard and don't wear makeup, or don't conform whatsoever, but don't start to utilize it to determine your self-worth. And part two of the double bind is that it makes you feel like an anti-feminist for conforming, which is not the case. You don't have to feel ashamed because you're conforming to it, and you don't have to feel horrible about yourself. It is okay to want to feel beautiful. It is okay to conform. I'm just saying that you must just acknowledge that it is a system made for you to feel that way, and not to let it determine your self-worth is all. To add on to my point of women constantly being conflicted about conforming, not conforming, being more beautiful, and whatever, there was a philosopher named Sandra Bartke who explored this idea in femininity and domination, where she said that women self-policy themselves. They view themselves and critique it and think of ways in which they can always look better. And what this does is it creates animosity between other women, because you view them as your competition, and suddenly anyone who is more beautiful than you becomes a threat. And social media has made that so much worse, because firstly, algorithmic comparison, everyone, you can see one girl and the other, and when you see someone that's gorgeous, you're like wow, and then you see someone else like who's more gorgeous, and if you go through the comments of them, it's just like ugh, like I want to kill myself, like I hate myself, I'm gonna look at the mirror and cry now or whatever. And it's so sad because also you're just constantly comparing yourself to these gorgeous people on the internet who are performing, who are like, just portraying the best version of themselves, but it creates this weird comparison that shouldn't be the ideal. And the system loves this because now it can monetize off your insecurity, because now you'll spend the next 2 hours scrolling on TikTok, finding glow up tips and finding out how you can in the next 2 weeks lose 10 kilos or whatever it might be. And all I can say is get over yourself. Stop thinking about yourself so much and criticizing yourself. You have to get over that tiny voice in your head that constantly is telling you to conform to the patriarchal beauty standard. Because guess what? Your worth isn't something that becomes tangible if you are beautiful. You are worth people's time, you are confident, and you are lovable. And that comes from within. It's not something that conforming to the beauty standard will suddenly magically make you. And it's so important you understand that. You can choose to define yourself on your own terms and not one that is dictated by this superficial standard which doesn't even really exist. And by this beauty standard that discounts your genetics, your ancestry, your culture, and all of that, and tries to put you in a box that you will never fit in. I think everyone just needs to sort of accept that they're slightly chopped, that you're slightly ugly, and that's fine. So what? So what? Because the more power you give to a system by believing in it and conforming to it, the more it will enforce itself onto you. I think an interesting character to talk about is Clavicula, who's notorious for looks maxing, which roughly translates to anyone who is not Gen Z, look better. Now, I think it's so funny that he's got so much attention for doing insane procedures or being absolutely obsessed over how he looks, and constantly wanting himself to look better. But I think that is comparable to an average teen girl. I think so many women partake in doing a full circle moment, and we're talking back about what the norm is, but so many women partake in such dangerous surgeries and such dangerous procedures to be more beautiful and are constantly obsessed over it for so many years just because that the system credits them for it. But it's the norm, it's what's normal. And the gag is, this is my favorite bit, it's sold as self-care. Oh my god. What falls under self-care? Hair care, skin care, all of these things, right? And if it were hygienic or health related, I'd understand. If you were promoting exercising and eating better and eating whole foods, or having a shower every day or whatever it might be, if it were related to health and hygiene, I'd understand. But it's entirely superficial. It's just created to serve consumerism, to buy more, because your hair can always be shinier, your skin can always be tighter, your face can be more snatched, your waist can be more starched. And if you feed into it and you try to conform, I swear, consumerism will have you buying 15 products before you even begin your self-care routine. Also, I think the wording of it all is so insidious. Self-care, although you're negligent of yourself if you weren't partaking in these self-care products, which isn't the case at all. Self-care only encompasses things that tend towards your physical health, mental health, spiritual health. And when things are forced onto you through consumerism with this propaganda of self-care, it's firstly untrue propaganda because it's advertisement, and number 3, it affects how you think about yourself, how you view other people, how you view societal practices, and what's normal and what's not. Last but not least, I would like to conclude by offering some perspective. If you were catapulted into the future and you were 85 years old, what would you have hoped your life to be? What would you have hoped to focus on and pursued? Now, I look back today, because I'm not 85 yet, if I were 85 years old, I think that I'd want to be passionate, ambitious, goal-oriented, healthy. I would want to have friends and family, like spend time with them, partake in societal activities and be kind, be loving, and all of these things. And that's what I choose to prioritize now, these experiences. And I don't think I would look back and hope that I had missed a meal or that I had purchased these items of makeup. And I'm not saying that you're an anti-feminist or you shouldn't do any of that. I'm just saying that we should be a little bit more mindful of what we prioritize in our life, what's important to us, because we are so ambitious and so passionate, and we have so many more important things to do with our life to get to be distracted with these superficial beauty standards and ideals, which we are infected with, and which we do think about, which I still think about every day, even though I'm making this video. And look, everyone is entitled to their stylistic preferences. Everyone can dress in the way that they want. But I'm not saying that beauty is the enemy. It's really not. Rather, it's this system that makes opting out of being beautiful the problem, that makes your entire worth depend on this superficial standard. You do not owe beauty to the world. It is not true. Your worth isn't defined by it. And I urge you to just ask yourself the question before you partake in any beauty standard that is propagating itself to be something of that's remotely empowering. When you do conform, do you feel anxious? Do you feel stressed? Does it make you obsessed with yourself? Because if it does, it's not empowering, and it's just trapping you into a box, into a cage of subservience to these patriarchal ideals. And yeah, your worth is worth so much more. Your life, you have so much to do with your life, and you have more impact on the system than you think you do, and you give power to the system. So that's all I have to say. And I know that was a really intense episode, but I hope it resonated with some of you. And that's all for today. Bye bye.